Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Untitled Reviews. This being a show where we talk about TV shows that are dramas. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the series premiere of Promised Land. A great series premiere. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. Well, first and foremost, I should say, I was wondering from the very beginning, the way it started, I was like, okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to rewind, show how this family kind of basically came to be by showing, maybe the dad and the mom, and then eventually what that eventually got built into. I didn't know if it was going to be the dad and the mom or just the dad or the mom, but the moment they showed things parallel to each other, I was like, oh, maybe I was wrong. I was wrong to think that. I should have kept with it because it's right. Turns out that is the case. It was the past and the future. Because I think they did a really good job. This is someone who only watched it one time. So I guess maybe if you go back through having that knowledge, it is clearer. But I think they did a good job, at least from what I saw, that they hid any technology. Especially because you're coming into a country, you probably wouldn't have a phone on you and stuff like that anyway. But maybe that should have been the key sign, maybe that in itself. I wouldn't expect them to have a phone, would you have a phone on you, regarding that situation, trying to, get across the border into the U.S. and stuff like that. Because I guess that should have also been, because also I guess it depends on where you're going in through the country. Because it's not actually, is it actually an actual wall? It's a fence, isn't it? The border between, maybe it actually is legitimately wall. I'm ignorant to that, so I don't know. I guess because in my head I'm always thinking it's a fence or something, isn't it? But I think it might actually be a legit wall, made of concrete and stuff like it is. Whatever the case may be. So maybe, like I said, maybe if I was more knowledgeable, a lot of that would have been clear something. No, this is in the past. But I think they did a really good job. Like I said, at least what I was trying to say is, I think on a first viewing, I think they did a good job of making it, hiding the fact is that was in the past and the rest of the episodes in the present day. Because it wasn't until they got to that point. Because I love how they, mess with you a little bit. It's oh, man, the person who does documents is dead. And the moment you're oh, man, this guy's looking for his brother, but his brother's not going to be here. It's oh my God, I ran into my brother. I'm like, wait, what? Then, who died? That doesn't make... And then we got the Ronald Reagan thing. I was like, oh, my God, this is the past. So, But it was kind of an interesting story. Obviously, I think at the heart of this is an immigrant story of you came into this country illegally looking for, for that American dream. Obviously, the American dream isn't what it used to be. Everyone has their picture of, because there used to be a legitimate, white picket fence, house and a kid, wife, kids, dog. That's supposed to be the stereotypical, that was always the image people painted of what the American dream was. And so, it might not even be I'm aiming for the American dream. It's just, I'm just trying to get by. I want to make money to send back to my family. We don't really know if that's all there is to our Carlos's situation. We know his brother was already working here, so who knows how much family they have back, in Mexico. So, but, it's interesting. Obviously, the only thing I saw about this show was the one trailer, and it was a 30-something second trailer, but it's they're a winemaking family, and obviously we get introduced to Joe, his wife Letty, their children, Veronica, Antonio, Mateo, Carmen, and Junior. I believe that's everybody. Obviously, every family has its issues. Their father's ruled with kind of an iron fist. He's run the family business. Veronica wants to take over, and her dad has set her up to be the one to take over. It's right, she knows the business side of things. She knows this and that. Mateo, who's the stepson, gets relegated to no one knows how to run the business like you do, but because he's a general manager, but you're not a winemaker. So in his eyes, he's never good enough in Joe's eyes. Because he always makes sure to be because someone's oh, your father, and I think he was talking to Daniela, she was oh, your father, he's that's not my father, that's my stepdad. Made that pretty clear, because he doesn't go oh, dad, he's no, Joe. He makes that pretty clear, because we learn pretty early on that, because Letty's all Mateo ever wants to do is live up to the image of you. He's been looking for a male role model, a male figure in his life since his father left his life. So she wants she's always saying, like, because Joe's kind of like, they accepted you as their stepmother pretty easily. My children did. The three being Antonio, Carmen, and Veronica. They accepted you. But, like, so is it just Mateo that has such an issue with it? And so, because it seems like, I think Mateo, amongst all the siblings, is the only one that's not his. Because I think Junior's young enough. Because Letty and him have been together for at least 20 years. So I'm assuming Junior's his as well. So Mateo is. That's going to make you feel even more ostracized amongst your family. Because, like, yeah, these are all your siblings. But as we find out later on, it's like, they're also cousins, so that makes it weird. But that's why he was making a point, like, yeah, they easily accepted you as their mother, even though at one point in time you were essentially their aunt. Once again, weird thing. So it's complicated in that regard. You can understand why Mateo always wants to. It's already hard enough feeling like an outsider in the family, and I think that's why he wanted to help Daniela, like, out of anyone. Like, he went above and beyond for her. It's like, no, I'll pay so that you could get your, like, yeah, you don't have your papers, right? Well, I'll pay someone. There's a guy here on the farm who can fix them up in the vineyard who can, like, fix that up for you. And it's like, why he went so above and beyond? Because I guess it's because he knows his parents' story. He knows his uncle, his dad, and his mom's story of what they went through. So, of course, he's going to be a little more sympathetic to that. Because he knew, like, right, he probably knew, like, if I went to my dad most likely won't do it. But it's like, me, at the very least, I can do this for you. You deserve a chance. Because he knows, like, right, if it wasn't for, like, someone doing the same thing for his parents, neither one of them would be in this country either. Like, so he's trying to give her an opportunity. And especially because it's like, right, because we never actually got to find out whatever happened to her sister, which the actress who plays Joanna, or rather Letty's sister, I was like, why she looks so familiar? I think the thing I recognize her from is the show Hellstrom. I can't remember her name. She was, ironically enough, a sister. She was like the new sister working with the church in Hellstrom. So I believe that's what I know that actress from. And God, they went through a rough patch, like rolling up on those people. Because Joanna, like, noticed immediately, like, the guy was over there by a drawer or something. I was like, is he getting a weapon or something? Because it's like, yeah, he's getting him all liquored up and stuff. And she's kind of like, I don't like this. It's weird. And in the moment, like, they try to leave Carlos getting choked out, I was like, no, Carlos. I was like, the knife. I saw the knife earlier. They made sure to show it on camera. The knife is there. Come on, get it, Carlos. Get it. He did it. I'm like, yeah. And then, like, bashed Juana's sister, like, bashed a, like, glass bottle against his that dude's face. I'm like, yeah. Sadly, she ended up getting shot. I was like, luckily they set the other women free too. I'm like, you are some garbage human beings, because these are people who are, there's no papers. They don't even know you exist in this country, so we could sell you, do whatever we want to you, Which is kind of obviously horrifying, just to be like, man, humans suck. We suck so much. Just the fact is, we could be so capable of good, but then we could also be capable of such terrible things like that. So all they went through to find their way to Heritage House, which is where this vineyard is and everything, what the family is. And it is interesting, and I think that speaks volumes that despite everything that Carlos does, like, it was pretty clear from the beginning he had a thing for her, but it seems like they didn't actually get together until 20 years late. I mean, until 20 years ago, present day. So, because he eventually got with Margaret, who's played by Bellamy Young, which I was like, hey, because I saw her in the, like, previews for just, I was like, hey, Bellamy Young, obviously playing, well, for one, back on ABC. Well, didn't she pop, if I'm not mistaken, didn't she pop up in Whiskey Cavalier? I want to say she popped up a little bit in Whiskey Cavalier, or maybe I'm thinking of someone else, because I know one of the lead actors, obviously, like, he was in, because I'm blanking on his, that actor's name, but obviously he was in, Scandal, and obviously so was Bellamy Young. Obviously, interesting timing too, because, well, the first episode came out last week. It's February 1st at the time of me recording this, just because I'm late to doing a lot of these recordings, but also, like, I completely forgot about this episode. It's been sitting on my VCR since last week, and so I was like, you know what, I'm gonna watch both episodes back to back. Well, I haven't watched the second episode yet, but you get what I'm trying to say. Regardless, timing's interesting. Lou Diamond Phillips was just on an episode of The Cleaning Lady, and, well, I'm sure we're going to be seeing a lot more Bellamy Young. I'm sure it's not just the first episode. I'm sure she's in the second episode. I think she's probably one of the main cast. And it's just interesting because it's like, hey, she was in Prodigal Son with Lou Diamond Phillips as well, so like that's why I just thought it was interesting. Going from like, regardless, I was about to go on a tangent, but like my whole point was like, right, he was with Margaret for a while, enough to have 3 children, and then eventually split, and then like sometime later, him and Letty got together. So I wonder what led. Well, I was about to say what led to that. It's most likely his brother, quote unquote, Billy, and Letty getting together because there was something there, which is kind of jacked up considering like he knew his brother liked her. He was like, but like Carlos was like, no, it's not like that. It's like it kind of was, but maybe he was just too embarrassed. And obviously your brother swooping in and stealing the girl you like, so it probably made things awkward for a while. It's just, once again, just like there's a lot of complications to kind of throw at you all at once with this family. It is a family born of competition because it's like, right, we're all striving to basically, it's all like, oh, listen, we all strive for their dad's love and attention in some shape or form, because Veronica wants to be like the perfect daughter of like, I got this, I'm going to run the business, this is my legacy. Antonio was kind of like the rejected child, even though Mateo kind of fits that role. I don't know whether Antonio was rejected because he was gay, because it's like, oh, who's that guy you were with? He's like, Greg. It's like, oh, yeah, we broke up. It's like, okay. So it seems like, because even Veronica's like, I wish I had been a bigger supporter for her. He's like, yeah, whatever. I worked through it out in therapy. I was like, that's a lie. The fact is you were like smiling like, haha, no, you're laughing it off. You're deflecting because you didn't. It's still bumbling beneath the surface. So I could easily tell that. Like, he definitely had some resentment still buried deep within. But like I said, Antonio has his issues with their dad. Junior kind of just looks up to his dad, doesn't want to, it's like later on when he gets in trouble at school, he's like, yo, are you going to tell dad? It's like, well, the dad's probably strict, but it's just like, right, he doesn't want to disappoint him. And once again, Mateo just wants to be noticed and he wants to be seen. Same thing for Carmen. She wants to be like, yeah, like I can bring something to the table. Like everyone wants to prove their worth to their dad. And that breeds competition, it breeds resentment, it breeds a lot of complicated feelings amongst that family. Especially with every all the other crazy stuff that's going on with them, Hell, Veronica hitting, like with the hit and run, which I should also bring up, the actress who plays Veronica, I know her from obviously more recently, Animal Kingdom, where she played Ren. There's something else I know her from aside from Animal Kingdom, but I can't. Oh yeah, there was the show Valor that was short-lived on the CW. I know she was in that, but I feel like there was something else. Maybe it was just Valor, but I feel like there was something else. I reckon I know that actress from. But regardless, I know like Veronica's whole thing was like hitting and running, which makes it even sadder because one of the person she hit and left was someone who was a worker from the vineyard too. So it's just like, oh, that's god awful. Especially because it's like, right, he's the guy that got the paperwork. So what Veronica did ended up screwing over Daniela, which kind of sucked. It kind of led to like, the dominoes falling the way it did. And so that the cop, like, so Joe has a lot of like, I guess, push and pull. Like he's worked his way to the top to be where he is. And the sheriff is like, or the cop or whatever, he's like, okay, Joe, you either have 2 options. 1, you give her over to ICE, you give them a small fish, and they're more likely to leave you alone. Or you let her stay here, you keep her low key, and just hope that ICE doesn't come sniffing around because they'll blow up your whole spot. So he decided not to turn her in because of his own story, but he didn't keep her around, which in itself pissed Mateo off because Mateo knows the truth about his story. Seems like none of his kids know, like until he started blabbing, it didn't seem like anyone knew the truth about his circumstances. It makes you wonder, does Margaret know? He probably kept that super tight lit, but this will probably all come back to blow back in his face in more ways than one. Well, obviously, there's already like Mateo, once again, breeding competition, decided to get away from this family, especially because he feels like his mom chose Joe and over everything, like over him after his father left. Like, it's like, rather than having my side in this situation, you've got Joe's side of things. Like, you married him, you backed into him, like, you bought into this family, and just, I've continued to be the outsider in all of this. It is kind of jacked up that Antonio, and I think that shows you his perspective on things, that he was laughing when Junior got tossed into the water. He was almost like, haha, and then the lady was like, why are you laughing? It's not funny. It's like, because he likes seeing his dad snap like that, because he knows, like, oh, how this is going to affect him in the future. Especially because, hey, he's working with Mother Dearest. Now, would he have done this beforehand? Who knows? But getting ostracized from the family, like, makes him go, like, you know what, I'm picking Mom over you, Dad, at any point in time. Because it seems like some of the bad blood between Margaret and Joe stems from, she's like, you took my father's vineyard. So, he's like, basically, you're mad because I took the little bit that your father gave me and I grew it into an empire all on its own. But she's like, yeah, my dad was dying, he drowning himself in wine or whatever, and you took what he had left. So maybe it's like Joe took that little vineyard, grew it so big, and eventually came in and swooped in and snatched everything away from Margaret's dad, and maybe that's where her resentment comes from. So now she's planning on taking everything, because it's like, I'm taking what's rightfully mine. This was my family's before it was your family's. I mean, hell, like, I gave you 3 kids too, so it's just as much my slice of the pie. And Antonio is giving her what she needs, because with the percentages that she's bought up from stockholders, she is up at, what was it, like 47% or something like that. Or 46 or something like that, and all she needs is Antonio's 5% to push her over the edge to have, like, majority ownership. That way she can swoop in and just underneath his nose and snatch everything up. Because Antonio knows his siblings enough, because he knows, for one, Mateo doesn't have any ownership in all of this, which he's like, oh, I'm curious how Letty's going to feel about that. Junior's is wrapped up in, like, a trust until he gets older, so he can't access that. Veronica, she's the, like, yeah, even if their dad treats her a certain way or whatever, she would never betray their dad. So she's always going to be, like, the hardest one to kind of get towards. Carmen probably seems like she might be the, I mean, he feels like he could, like, sway her, but also is a thing of, yeah, but there's still going to be a little, like, getting his siblings, manipulating, he can probably manipulate them because he knows them better than anyone. I was also wondering, too, speaking of Carmen, whether or not there was something there between Carmen and Michael, which I noticed the actor's name. I saw, like, oh, it's Andrew J. West or whatever. I'm like, hey, I saw the name. I was like, isn't that? And it's like, yeah, it's, once ABC related. That's the actor who played the adult version of Henry from Once Upon a Time in the season 6 finale, but also in the final 7th and what became the 7th and final season of the series. So I thought that was interesting. I was like, hey. But yeah, that moment they had where he was like, oh no, like, I have some investors, I could get them to talk to you. She's like, yeah, sure. And I'm like, those looks here, shit. I'm like, is there something happening between you two? If it isn't already, it might, because you know there's some drama going to stir up, because, well, Veronica hasn't told anyone what she did. She called 911 and bailed because there was someone driving nearby. Luckily, she was able to peel off. I don't know if any of the articles or anything said that the guy actually died. Even the cop, I don't think he said he died, just that the guy was undocumented. I think that was about it. Maybe he said he died and I just didn't remember. I don't think so, but she's got a guilty conscience about it. So I think that's going to be eating away at her all the while. So especially when she just got the keys to the kingdom, she's going to be distracted. It's interesting, too, because Antonia had just told her, like, right, you still know right from wrong. Dad will do things wrong. He kind of forgot right and wrong just because to get what he wants, he doesn't care. You still having that, like, conscience, essentially, is a good thing. Don't lose that. And eventually comes a time where, like, obviously now that conscience is going to be eating her alive. Now the question is, how is she going to resolve this situation? Because now it's out in the open. It's not like you can make that go away necessarily, but she might try. She might go to her dad, because her dad might be like, you know what? You screwed up so big. I'm taking the keys back. You're not responsible enough. And now I'm going to have to clean up your mess. And that in itself, that might be what Antonio's waiting for. Because having an opportunity like that might get him the keys to the castle. Like, oh, I'm more responsible. I'm ready for this. Because not unless, like, Veronica decides that she's going to confide in Antonio about it. And then Antonio uses it against her. To swoop in and just like, right, Dad, I'm the only one of your children you can count on. Like, slowly but surely, like, basically turned his siblings against Joe and also turned Joe against his siblings until, like, right, I'm the prodigal son that's returned. I will be the hope for this business, you know? Especially considering, like, all that Joe poured into it, his background, coming to this country the way he did, working his way up. You know, which is even interesting because you parallel that to Veronica, because she was like, no, I wanted to start off at an entry level and work my way up because I wanted to prove like I deserve to be here, not just because my dad owns the company is the reason why I'm here. So obviously Veronica's a lot like their dad in that regard. It is sad though, like once again at the end of the day, that Joe having a similar circumstance to Daniela, because Letty was like, right, we were in that same situation, like, why can't you help it? But for him, it's like protecting his legacy. It's like, I get it. I feel bad for you, but I've worked too hard to be where I am to jeopardize all of that. Like I've blood, sweat, and tears is going into this. I've lost so much. We've gone through too much. Once again, we never got any closure on whatever happened to Letty's sister. I don't, because she was like, right, even if I get like basically sent back, I'll try again. I'll find a way. Like maybe that wasn't the case. Who knows? Well, once again, it's just the first episode, so once again, the second episode is out because I ended up waiting too long. But the second episode is out. I just haven't watched it yet, so we'll see if we get some clarity with that. Because I am curious, like, is this going to be one of those shows too that bounces back and forth between present day and the past? Like, we saw the beginnings of it, so I'm sure like we'll rewind to kind of get context for like, oh yeah, like what went down between him and his brother, because his brother like had his eyes set on Heritage House, but it might more so be like, because it seems like the way they're setting it up, like Heritage House originally belonged to Margaret's family, and then basically what's his face, Joe came in and swooped it all up. Now, I'm curious, are they going to set that story up to be like oh, you fell in love with the quote-unquote help, and so maybe that led to issues between her and her dad getting sick, and maybe she kind of felt like Joe took advantage of her. It's like, right, you took what we kind of gave you, and then you took everything from my family. That maybe in Margaret's eyes, it's like I was just a means to an end to you, so... Maybe that's also why like things didn't work out between him and Letty, because he kind of chose like, no, I'm gonna use this opportunity, and he ended up choosing Margaret over Letty, and that led to maybe just like, or maybe once again maybe the Letty and Billy thing happened beforehand, but because Billy's dream was to own this, but the way Mateo talks about it is like, you stabbed my dad in the back, but Joe was like, no, he stabbed me in the back. Once again. There are two sides to every story, but you know, because everyone's got their own spin, their own perspective, and it's not, and the truth exists somewhere in between. So, which we do see that Billy is. The moment Letty noticed him and was like, he was like, Father Ramos, I was like, that's obviously at the time I didn't know that was Joe's brother, but I was like, that's got to be Mateo's dad, and it is. That actor, I know him from, what immediately my brain thinks of Rev from Midnight Texas, but most recently I'd say it was The Outsider on HBO. It was, I'm blanking on his character's name. It wasn't like Eustace or something like that, was it? I can't remember, but I remember him being in the show, so that was interesting. Interesting for him to be like a priest now, too. Obviously, Letty tried to come to him at the end there. Like, she's just trying to figure out why. Like, for one, like, why'd you leave and why are you back now? A lot of great setup, and I'm just interested to see the continuation and payoff as we go forward with these stories into the next episode. Like I said, once again, it's already out. I'm going to watch that immediately after I finish this recording. So I'm excited to see where all of this ends up taking us going forward into the next episode. But really, that's all I'm going to talk about. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day, and goodbye.